If you want to heal, you must stop obsessing about the past. And this is one of those lessons I really wish I had learned sooner. Because I wasted so much time on things that weren't important in the end. And I just felt lost in this, weird maze and I just didn't know the way out. And nowadays there is a common narrative that you must excavate every inch of your past. I find the origins of all your wounds and traumas if you want to heal. But the thing is that this is just half of the equation, and if you don't know what to do with this information, you can quickly get lost and most likely you will never heal. In contrast, I've learned during my practice as a therapist that the biggest sign of someone who is healing and integrating their shadows is creativity. When I notice my clients entertaining new possibilities and stepping away from automatic responses, I know that all of their hard work is paying off. And that's why I consider creativity one of the biggest tools when it comes to healing and integration. And this isn't a surprise when you understand how the psyche works. So that's why we will uncover why obsessing about the past is always detrimental and how creativity can help us get unstuck. And before we start, let me tell you that all of these insights are based on my book Pistes Demystify Jungian Psychology, and I'm making experiments. When you join my newsletter, I'll send you a free copy of the entire book. And if you like it, you can order a physical copy from Amazon later or get it from Kindle as well. So now, let's start. So the first thing you have to understand is that the personal shadow is mainly made out of complexes. And simply put, these complexes create fixed narratives in our minds. In other words, when we are neurotic and under the influence of a complex, we live the same story over and over again. It's like that movie, Groundhog Day, every single day. So these complexes produce rigid scripts that condition how we see the world and shape our sense of identity, and consequently influence all of our behaviors and decisions. And as you can see, this framework aligns very well with the idea of core beliefs from CBT. So Carl Jung knew about all of this stuff way back. So what happens is that we end up attracting the same kinds of toxic relationships, have the same frustrating experiences with work, and experiencing the same self-defeating thoughts and negative emotions over and over again. So being trapped in a complex is the opposite of a creative life. Now, the biggest mistake I see when people are trying to heal is precisely becoming obsessed with their pasts, because this only enhances the problem. And as we previously discussed, there is this common narrative that you have to excavate every inch of our past to heal and find the origins of our trauma. And if you didn't find it yet, it's because you didn't dig deep enough. And again, the problem is that understanding our pasts is only half of the equation. And also, this unilateral attitude goes against healing because it tends to enhance neurosis. So the first thing that tends to happen when we are dealing with traumatic influences is a fundamental dissociation from reality. So we disconnect from our bodies and the practical aspects of life and start living exclusively in our heads. So we are never present and start filtering all of our reality through our wounds. And that's why we also unconsciously perpetuate these narratives and end up generating the same results over and over again. And when you add an obsession with the past to this equation, you can never move on. And the more you excavate negative experiences, the more you become identified with them. So you develop tunnel vision and stop seeing new possibilities. And in worst cases, people re-traumatize themselves. And the past becomes a crutch and a great justification for not changing in the present moment. But this approach is neurotic and also fails to understand that single events are rarely powerful enough to shape someone's identity. Rather, we have to understand someone's life story and the series of choices and experiences that shaped them. And also, even when there's a powerful event at play, our individual perceptions influence its effects much more than we tend to believe. And that's why the solution isn't in the past, but in what we choose to do in the now, as healing involves being present. And yes, of course, it's important to understand our pasts, but once we map the narratives that shaped our lives, it's time to act because healing is a process and happens on a daily basis by making new choices and employing different actions that support the construction of a new narrative and a fundamental change in our perceptions. And I already covered this whole process in depth in my Demystifying Shadow Work series, so I link it for you over here and also down below. And if you want to take one step further, I also recommend you to check my course Catabasis, the Shadow Integration Manual. And if you want to work one-on-one with me, you can also check my mentorship. All links in the description. So now I want to discuss and explore how creativity can help us in the creation of new narratives. Firstly, creativity helps in cases of extreme intellectualization. So it's important to understand that the unconscious, differently from the conscious mind, operates with a symbolic language charged with emotions. And overly intellectual people often get stuck because they're too disconnected from their feelings and consequently can't properly process them. So, in this case, by engaging in creative endeavors that allow them to symbolize what's obscure, they can finally allow their emotions to move through their bodies and get unstuck. So, creativity is great to surpass these defenses. And also, this capacity to symbolize also help us change our perception of past events. And when we can do that, we also change how they affect us in the present moment. So, of course, we can't change the past, but these endeavors can help us change how they affect us in the present. Now, secondly, creativity helps with perfectionism, one of the most common trauma responses. So, by freely expressing ourselves in a safe environment and context, we can learn to accept our own emotions and also make mistakes. And we can dare to be who we truly are and also learn a new language. And in turn, this shrinks the inner critic and helps us develop more self compassion. And by learning to express our feelings and emotions, we can also learn how to communicate them better. And instead of having all of those defenses we previously discussed, we are more in tune with our bodies and what we feel, and we can start using them as a guide. And thirdly, creativity is a great emotional regulation tool. In my opinion, the best there is. So, especially in cases of compulsions and addictions, creativity can become a great substitute. So, simplifying things, we usually gravitate towards addictions because we use them to soothe ourselves when we're feeling stressed and overwhelmed, anxious, whatever. You use the substances to not feel whatever we are feeling. And the more we open ourselves to these creative endeavors, the less we feel the need to, this pull to use these substances. Because now we have this phenomenal and amazing thing, that help us feel happier and we get to express ourselves. We get to, to create something new, obviously, creativity, create something new, but you get what I'm saying. And this leads us to my final point, because living a creative life also leads to individuation, to uncovering who we truly are. So it's important to understand that the unconscious isn't made of only repressed things, but it also has a teleological component. So, in other words, the unconscious is also the matrix of our creative potential, new possibilities, and everything we are yet to become. And that's why individuation involves understanding what our souls desire to create through us. When we can tap into this creative energy, we can finally disrupt those rigid scripts and adopt new behaviors, make different decisions, and build better relationships. We get to create new narratives. But for this to happen, we must bridge the gap between our creative practices and real life. This isn't only about playing music or drawing half an hour every day, but envisioning real life and our relationships as our canvas to which we must apply all of our efforts. And that's how you live a more inspired and creative life. And finally, you can find a step-by-step to practice shadow work according to Carl Jung's original ideas in this video over here.